with ease. The 49ers, some days it's a little easier than others watching them. And today was one of those easy days.
Today was, let's face it, kind of a joke. But that's why we bet on them, because we bet on this version of the Niners. Strangleholding, just kind of knocking out, being on a completely different level, and that they were. Now, it was clear they were way better talent-wise. And then I think whenever you play a team that's just willing to run the ball literally every play, and you're getting bludgeoned by the run, it can really, in a way, fuck you up mentally, because they became a very, very dumb team, the Jags, as the game went on, jumping off sides and personal fouls, swinging at guys. I thought the Niners were better, but they kind of broke them early. I think you had a tweet that, like, the inner Harbaugh, like, listen, I texted you. Yeah. There are way more similarities in Kyle and Jim Harbaugh than Jed will ever want to admit. Because let's face it, guy, they've used, I guess, the run scheme a little differently, but the importance of the run game, I would say they are on the same page. I would say that Kyle gets a hard-on for 19 to 20 play drives of basically running it every play. Same with Jim. Now, again, they like throwing touchdowns as much as the next guy, but if you could choose, you're like, hey, you're going to win either way. Do you want to have 75 rush attempts or 10? They would choose 75 every day. And I think Kyle has gotten back there the last 2 weeks, and they've kind of it's actually, Debo's been a star. We'll dive into but he's gotten back to his roots. And obviously this game coming up, I think it's played out perfectly, and we talked about it. We'll get into rooting for who to lose. Minnesota won. This game's huge on Sunday now. It's a late November playoff game, but I think he's got his philosophical belief on how to win with this team, this 2021 team. I think he feels pretty good where he's at right now.
Yeah, and that first drive was 20 plays, which topped last week's first drive of 18 plays. This one resulted in a field goal, not a touchdown. It went 99 yards. Well, I mean, it went 77 yards. The math to me is still wild that you can go 77 yards and take 20 plays to go that short of amount of a distance. Like, how is there enough plays to go that many yards? And they needed a lot to happen. I mean, that drive, just
a lot of 3-yard runs in first downs, right? So they're getting first downs every 3 plays, but there are 2 and 3 yard runs in those plays,
and some bailout penalties.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, I mean, he held him on the one kill. It was a hold.
Yeah, okay. It just bailed. They got a penalty. It felt like they had things going their way. Is probably the best way. I don't mean to say they didn't deserve it, but
Jimmy took some sacks on that drive as well, if I remember correctly.
This is what I don't love. I love watching a 19-play drive get executed. I think there was a Jeff Wilson did he fumble the ball and recovered it himself? Just when you run that many plays, you leave room for a bunch of things to go sideways. I love what they almost took the full first quarter.
They've done it 2 weeks in a row. Their game was at halftime before every other game in the league. You notice that? And there's not a staggered start at 10 a.m. They all kick off at 10:04, right?
Right.
I looked up, and they were 5 minutes into halftime. Other games were still at the 2-minute warning. They were way ahead of every game because they didn't have any stoppages in the first quarter, which I'm all here for. I'm cool with it.
I'm cool with it too. I'm just saying, you're right. This is who they are. That being who they are is that there is an inherent flaw in that, especially if you fall behind. But then they actually got some other things going, and it worked. Did you feel like when they had to kick the field goal on that first drive, because it looked for a minute like they were going to go for it? What did you think of them kicking the field goal?
I tweeted out a cat emoji. It was a pussy move by Kyle. Now it worked out, and I was in the car, between over the last couple hours, and I guess right after the game, and KNBR had Kyle's press conference going. He said, because they were kind of calling him out, why didn't you go for it there? He's like, listen, I would have if it was a yard. I looked down, it was closer to 2, and as the game played out, you realize the opponent. To me, there's a balance of being an aggressive coach. I always believe to lean that way. Now, big picture in the game, playing the Jags, are you going to get extra credit points for being super aggressive or being conservative like he was? It worked out fine. right? I don't think you can play like that, for example, this week, an offense that can score. You're playing Trevor Lawrence in an offense that can't score. You play Dalvin Cook, you play Justin Jefferson, you play Adam Thielen. I will not support doing that. I didn't make that big of a deal with it, besides like making fun of him, calling him a wuss. But like, I don't think that is the tack that he can take with the better teams that can score points. You agree there?
Yeah, I generally
think it's
agree
very
there. I think we
opponent
saw him-
dependent.
I think we saw him being really aggressive in like some fourth down situations against the Rams. I also think because you could make even I was good with the field goal. I don't think he was being a pussy by kicking the field goal. But you could make the counter argument if the Jags offense sucks, go for it there. What's the worst thing that happens? You fail and they've got the ball on their own 2-yard line. But I understand when you put a 20-play drive together, you want to walk away with points.
Yeah, just, at the end of the day, when you're playing a team like the Jags, it's kind of irrelevant whether he kicks a field goal or goes for it. My point is just when you're playing Minnesota, now you play the Bengals, now you play the Titans. Like you just play these better teams where, you're fighting for the wild card spot against just better offenses. You play the Rams again. Like I think he would probably lean going for it. I do think opponent dependent. He sees a team that had scored 9 points, and how many points the Jags scored the previous week? 17. Like they had scored, 25 points basically the last 2 weeks. You weren't playing some explosive team that's going to get to 30 very easy. And I know they hadn't touched the ball yet.
Yeah, I mean, the counter, though, would be like Minnesota plays in a ton of close games that come down to field goals. We see it all the time.
Yeah, but my point, they score points, though.
I understand. I get it. I understand.
Jags do not score points.
I understand. I get it. But I also understand a 20-play drive needing to end in points. I actually find myself a lot of times when teams end up in short yardage kicking on fourth down, hating their third down plays. Jeff Wilson had a wide open touchdown, and Jimmy just missed him.
I have less of a beef with it, 8 minutes into the game than I do in the third quarter. When there's less possessions left, there's the entire game's left. That's where I don't make that big a deal over it. Like I tweeted the cat emoji again. Like I didn't really care. Like I wasn't worried they were going to win or lose the game. Like I had full faith they were going to win. To me, when coaches do that, like it's 20-20. And you could kick a field goal or go for it in the late third quarter, right? When there's only 2 possessions each left or whatever in the game.
Yeah.
It's the first possession of the game. Like I don't think I wasn't going to make that big a deal with it.
I thought that play, the play before the Jeff Wilson drop, and I mean, we saw it a lot. I thought today we see it all the time. But Shanahan, did you see the formation on that play? It was Kittle lined up at fullback, Debo lined up at running back, Jeff Wilson Jr. lined up basically at tight end, like attached to the left tackle, to the left of the formation, obviously. Kyle's just throwing a lot. And you could feel there was a little bit of a difference. Debo, what was Debo's final number? 8 yards a carry or something like that?
9.9.
9.9. Because his first carry, I'm like, you're not catching the defense by surprise with that Debo thing this week. Going to be a little tougher. And then it wasn't. It worked again. It just works.
Well, when I was in the car, they asked Kyle in the press conference, like, do you feel comfortable utilizing Debo that much as a running back? He's like, well, when he's going to be that effective, what am I supposed to not go back to the well? Like he's like, well, a lot of times when you see a guy like Debo as a wide receiver have a 80-yard game on the ground, he made a good point. He's like, typically you probably get one play for 65 yards, right? And maybe you give him a couple other carries, but it's really just the one play accounts for 90% of it. That was not the case. Like he was just banging off runs. He's a very natural, and in fairness, if they were using him when they had Elijah Mitchell, like they were in somewhat of a pinch, right? They're starting running back who's really good, has a broken finger, and they inactivated him before the game, right? Which I don't blame them.
He feels like a Heisman candidate, is what I tweeted today. Like that's how, you know what it is? It's what the Jags wanted Laviska Shenault to be. And the Jags just aren't good enough to make it work.
And Debo's probably a better player than Laviska.
And Debo probably is a better player, but
no, he is a better player. Probably.
Okay, it's whatever. But it's what a lot of coaches, it's what a lot of teams hope to find. And I mean they got it. It's wild. And he's been, knock on wood, I mean he's been consistently available for them now for several weeks. We can get to more of him later, but yeah, it was just a total. That's what you do to the Jaguars. Nobody steamrolls after after a defensive takeaway like Kyle Shanahan's 49ers, I don't think.
Well, but you know what's crazy, guy? is before Monday Night Football against the Rams, they weren't getting those fumbles, right?
Right.
That wasn't happening. They weren't getting the picks. Even
They were
today,
losing
like,
the ball.
When you said Jeff Wilson, was it Jawan Jennings that fell on it? Like, they were losing that football. Instead, now it's happening to them. It just shows you turnovers in general are pretty fickle, right? They go back and forth. Like, sometimes you're just on the right end. Now, if your quarterback's going to throw 20, like he's throwing 20 picks. But I'm just saying, like, if you're just an average NFL team, I think picks sometimes go your way. Sometimes you don't get them. Sometimes the fumbles. The Niners were on the wrong end of them for several weeks, and now they've been on the right end. And clearly, the good part is, though, them on their comeback, is that they're not dependent on that. Like, they have really, really good players. So even if they're, like, they would sign up for a game. I think a lot of coaches would be like, hey, there are going to be 4 turnovers in the game, but you don't know where they're coming. They'd be like, I'll sign up for that. Take our chances. The Niners would be fine with just being neutral. Like, 0 turnovers either side, right? Let our blue chippers and our elite guys just out-elite you. They don't want to take that risk. Because there's just the oblong spheroid or whatever the thing's called bounces weird ways.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And Jimmy, I mean, I guess Jimmy didn't really even get close to throwing a pick today. Now he had some bad misses. I mean, that Jeff Wilson ball, again, doesn't come back to bite him. But you just throw the lobber. Why'd he throw a rope there?
I felt like after the replay, I need to watch again. Was somebody in his face? It didn't feel like anybody was.
Sometimes you look and you don't realize he's as open. Like, maybe you think there's a guy because he let him. Like, bro, there's not a guy in a 10-yard radius of him.
Part of it is you're throwing the ball to Jeff Wilson, right? And you're not throwing the ball to, like, does George Kittle catch that exact same pass?
Maybe. I mean, it was way in front of him.
I know.
It was a terrible throw.
I'm just saying you're putting your running back in that position, but no, it was a bad throw. It was definitely.
Jeff Wilson's a pretty solid player.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 2 lost fumbles for the Jags, no lost fumbles for the Niners. Like I said, it does feel like, and I've always felt this way going back several years, that a turnover, like this team, as much as any other team that I've watched in the last few years, turns a takeaway into like a 17-point lead.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of just the way when they can run the football, it's just getting behind on them. Unlike the Lions game, there was no life from the Jags. Did Trevor Lawrence? I mean, how many plays were there where you felt like, oh, I'd love to rewind and watch that Jags offensive play again?
They look pretty terrible. They look awful. When I watched the Colts game, I thought they looked better against the Colts. Just their offensive rhythm, he looked better. He was 16 of 25 today for 160 yards, and just like meh.
Honestly, felt worse.
Yeah, it looked way worse. I mean, they only ran for 50.
Not even blaming him. They're just unwatchable.
Yeah, it's not his fault because the Niners would take him in a heartbeat. Like, if you told Kyle Shanahan tomorrow you can trade Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo straight up for Trevor Lawrence, they wouldn't hesitate. Because you could see, like, there were a couple plays, like, he's a good athlete, he's big. That team sucks. You know, but again, that's why we bet on them. It's why we talked about this week. You just take care of business. Now, you didn't need to have a 20-point win. Right, you're on the road, early kickoff, but to me, that was just, we're kicking your ass. And honestly, we had to kick field goals a couple times. It could have been 40-10, which is what a good team does against, I mean, what are the Jags? Drafting the top 5? That's what they feel like to me.
John, no, they feel like they should be drafting number 1. If anybody else, I mean, them or the Lions is not drafting number 1.
Texans have had their moments.
Texans have felt so much better than either one of those teams.
So
Texans beat the Titans today.
Right now, the Jags would be drafting 3rd. Don't forget about the Jets. The Jets lost the Dolphins.
The Jets feel much better to me than the Jags do. But you're right, they have the same record, 2-8.
The Dolphins somehow are 4-7.
Yeah, I mean the Dolphins don't deserve.
Lions are in pretty good shape for that number 1 overall pick.
We'll see if that tie comes back into play.
I don't think it will because they gotta win 2 games, and the Jets might have one more win. They might cruise the number 1 pick with like a 3-game margin. Lions stink.
Should they get the 2nd pick? Is there a point at which you should get 2 picks in the top 2 if you're like 3 games worse than the next worst team?
Well, you could argue this year the draft is there aren't many Nick Bosa's walking through that. There's no Trent Williams walking through that door.
But somebody will be good. That's the thing, right?
Well, for sure, but you feel very good when there's like 7 elite prospects, right? Yeah. Is there Penei Sewell in this draft? You know, I mean, it doesn't feel like this is the draft is top heavy.
O-line tape on that.
Even Kayvon, I mean, if you're gonna give up multiple ones like the Niners, this is the draft to do it.
Right. Well, what about the 2023 draft?
Well, that one could get better.
Okay. Are you? Do you want to talk about Jimmy in the context of this conversation?
Yeah, go. Let's do it.
Well, I mean, he was 16 of 22, 176, 2 touchdowns, no picks. And I think we established a while ago, there's not a reevaluation of Jimmy Garoppolo that happens every week. I think we have a pretty good idea of what he is. I know that we do, and I know what he looks like when he's going well, and I know what he looks like when he's playing poorly. And I think we've talked about it for a long time. When he's playing well, if other things happen around him, if guys are making plays, if the defense is making stops, then you're in pretty good shape. And that's where they are. I just, we like to do people tell you, like, just check in on a friend for no reason. We like to check in on Jimmy and that Jimmy topic every week, just because he's the quarterback of the team.
Well, they talked about it a little bit today on the broadcast. Like, they're going to need to depend on him more to do what they want to do, right? Whether that's, are we going to get in the playoff picture still later? This is a separate topic from that?
A separate topic, yeah.
But just the one thing they do have, like Jimmy against Simeon, Jalen Hurts, and Kirk Cousins, like that's the crew of teams he's competing against for the spot. But once you make the playoffs, you do like, okay, we're playing Kyler. Okay, we're playing Tom. Okay, even Stafford, who was shitty, like he's still Matt Stafford and can throw for 350 yards, right? Okay, those are the teams you're playing. So there is going to be gravy if they get the 7 seed. Kyle would get a lot of credit, right? If you went 10-7, how shitty it looked early. But no one's just going to be cool with you losing by 20 in that game. So for them to be good, he is not going to just be able to do the 16 for 20, 180 yards every game. We talked about this last week. I said, philosophically, that's what Kyle wants to do. And you can do that against some opponents. But there are some opponents where it's just not, you're going to need him to throw for 275 yards, right? And one thing that can't be argued, the good part is they have the weapons for him to throw to, right? Like if you put Josh Allen or Mahomes or Herbert or Lamar, this is 300-yard ability with the guys surrounding him, correct? It's not like, well, he's playing with Haberman, Middlekauff, and Juwan Jennings. Like that ain't the case. He's playing with guys that. So it's a balance. Like,
hey, Juwan Jennings plays his ass off.
No, he looks fine. He's already
tried to get him a touchdown today. Didn't get there.
Good job by the DB. He got out there pretty fast.
It was, yeah.
But I do think it's pretty clear, like, their skill guys are good enough if Jimmy plays well. One thing you saw today a little bit, though, that, like, his rhythm has really been off for the last couple of years. It felt like he used to get rid of the ball. Like, his release, once he throws the ball, he gets rid of it fast. It does feel sometimes when he's in the backfield, and again, Kyle could say those are bad plays. They were long developing. Sometimes he does hold on to the ball like a younger player does and take a sack that, at least from the TV sitting on our couch, looks pretty shitty, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think,
like, Jimmy, the blitz is coming. It's not like a blitz, right? It's like a delayed blitz. The dude's coming from the secondary.
Right. It's got to get out.
To win the better games, as these games, I mean, starting this week, guy. I mean, it's, what Mike Zimmer does historically? Be known for blitzing. He's a blitzer.
I think there's a couple of things, though. I don't think it's, for all that we talk about Jimmy being able to throw the ball down the field. That's not who he is. So this team needs sustained drives. And what do you need on sustained drives? You need conversions, right? Third down conversions, and you need to not make mistakes. And I don't think it's an accident. And I think it's more about what Garoppolo doesn't do in games than what he does do in games. Like, I don't think he has to do anything extraordinary. Their team is solid enough. He doesn't have to do anything extraordinary. But he cannot make mistakes. And I don't want to oversimplify this, but the Niners, they played the Lions. They won the game. He didn't throw a pick. He didn't throw a pick against the Eagles. They won the game. He threw a pick against the Packers. They lost the game. He threw a pick against the Seahawks. They lost the game. He threw 2 picks to the Colts. They lost the game. He didn't throw one against the Bears. They won the game. He threw a pick against the Cardinals. They lost the game. He didn't throw one against the Rams. They won the game. He didn't throw one against the Jags. They won the game.
Their only good win, though, against a good team is the Rams. So it's like you just are going to have to throw the ball. I would say you're going to tend to have to throw the ball more against better teams.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
They're not always going to be up 10-0, 14-0, correct? Like there's going to be a game, even if they end up winning, where they're probably down 10-0. Just the ebb and flow of a football season.
Yep.
And usually there, it just might, instead of, again, I'm not talking 40 attempts. There's just going to be a game where he has to attempt the ball 32 times. And you're right. He is one of those guys, the more time he attempts it, and the farther it gets pushed down the field, the more likely he is to throw an interception. And their margin for error, turnover-wise, I'm not disagreeing. I'm not rooting for him to throw it more. But for them to make the playoffs, he's going to have a couple games that probably are more than 22 attempts or 20 attempts or 18 attempts, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it happened a couple times the year they went to the Super Bowl when they were better, right?
He's been more accurate the last couple weeks. He's done a better job, I thought, of not airmailing the ball. Even just the touchdown to Kittle, he has been very accurate. I thought today his accuracy, was by far his most accurate day. Didn't you?
I felt pretty
hitting guys in hands, not just on the slant route, hitting the guy in stride.
I thought
he
his
was
first
excellent.
throw of the game after Trent Cannon lost the ball in the sun, a la Josh Hamilton, and they ran that fucking rainbow throw to Kittle. It was a really good throw.
Had a sweet pass to Ayuk that made a good pass, but everything's been accurate, I thought, today.
He had his back is like on the 4-yard line, defender bearing down. He's got to get it up over the top. It was a really good throw.
That was a good little lollipop by him for sure.